Okay, do you have any question before we start? You have any question?
No, doctor.
No, doctor.
Okay, today we will discuss Dulce et Decorum Est. But before I discuss this poem, I have to introduce the Rhetorical Triangle. Okay? First of all, I have to define rhetoric. Okay, I will define rhetoric for you.
بدي اسمع المحاضرة. أنا بدي ألعب فوت ولا جو؟
أودي.
Okay, stop this noise. Okay. Okay, rhetoric is the art of persuasion. Rana Bashir, mute yourself, please. Okay, rhetoric is the art of persuading. So in this case, art is related, or rhetoric is related to the art of writing argumentative essays. Therefore, the purpose of an argument is to persuade the audience of a certain point of view. Okay? So you may have a point of view that you want to convince your audience of. So you present your proofs to support your point of view. So in this case, the issue that you are dealing with is a debatable issue. In other words, there are two sides on the same issue, i.e. there are more than one point of view. And when you argue for a certain point of view, you want to show your audience that your point of view is more feasible than the other points of view. So that's why when we write an argument or an argumentative essay, we have to deal with the rhetorical triangle. The rhetorical triangle is made up of three components: logos, ethos, ethos, and pathos. These three elements are interrelated, i.e. they are related to each other. Okay? Now logos is related to the message that you want to convey through your argument. So this is logos. Logos is the message that you want to convey through your argument, i.e. it is your own point of view. Ethos refers to the author. And pathos is related to the audience, i.e. to your readers. Okay, so in this case, the message, the author, and the audience are related. So that's why we call it the rhetorical triangle. Okay, now logos is not only the message that you want to communicate to your audience. Logos includes all the logical proofs that you present in your argument. Okay, logos includes all the logical proofs that you present in your argument. Okay, so logos is related to logic. This is number one. Is it clear?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, number two,
Yes.
you have ethos. Ethos refers to the reliability of the author. Okay, ethos refers to the reliability of the author, i.e. can we consider the author authentic? Can we rely on his point of view? Can we accept it as feasible? This is the meaning of reliability. Number three is ethos, pathos. Pathos is related to the emotions of the audience. So here we say pathos means appealing to the emotions of the audience. Okay? So logos, ethos, pathos are different types of proof that the writer of an argument draws on. Okay? So when you write an argumentative essay, you should have different types of proofs. You may have logical proofs. You will have your own reliability as a writer, and you may appeal to the emotions of the audience, i.e. you may lead the audience to agree with your point of view by presenting something that creates emotions within the audience. Okay, so these are the different types of proofs that we have in an argumentative essay or in an argument. Okay, so we may have the three, we may have two. Okay, so it depends on what you want to say. Okay, now here we have different types of logical proofs. Okay, we have different types of logical proofs. Number one, okay, we have the inductive method. The inductive method, or what we call induction. Okay, now induction means that we reason, our argument follows a certain kind of reasoning, i.e. thinking. So induction means a kind of reasoning that proceeds from the particular to the general, from the specific to the general. This is induction. It is reasoning that proceeds from the specific or particular to the general. What does it mean? It means that you take a specific instance, i.e. a specific example, and on the basis of this specific example, you make a certain kind of generalization. Okay, you take a specific example, then you apply it to a general sample, to a general group of individuals. I will give you an example. Let's say George is a Lebanese university student. Okay, so this is what we call a specific instant. Okay, so we have the Lebanese university. The Lebanese university has thousands of students. Okay, so out of these students, George is one student. So I take George as an example, and I built my reasoning, my judgment, my argument on this example. So I say George is a Lebanese university student. So this is the first step of reasoning. Okay, so we call it the first premise. This is what we call a premise in rhetoric or in logic. Okay, so George is a Lebanese university student. Okay, so the second thing that I say is George is a hard working student. Okay, now on the basis of the fact that George is a hard working student, I make a generalization. So I say, therefore, all Lebanese university students are hardworking. Okay, so this is what we mean by reasoning from the particular to the general. Okay, so George is one of the students of the Lebanese university. He is a hard-working student. So I take George as a basis for my judgment on the students of the Lebanese university. So the argument goes as follows, or the reasoning goes as follows. George is a Lebanese university student. George is hardworking. Therefore, all Lebanese university students are hardworking. Therefore, we proceed from the specific to the general. Is it clear?
Yes,
Yes,
doctor.
dear. Yes,
Okay.
doctor.
Okay,
Yes, doctor.
this is induction. Number two, we have deduction. Deduction is the opposite of induction. Deduction is a kind of reasoning that proceeds from the general to the specific. Proceeding from the general to the specific. Okay, so that's why it is the opposite of induction. So here I will give you the same example. All Lebanese university students are hardworking. All Lebanese university students are hard working. George is a Lebanese university student. Therefore, George is hard working. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. You may have studied this at school, I'm sure. Didn't you?
Yes, sure. Okay. Induction. Deduction number 3 is called analogy. Analogy means comparison. I.e., you compare two things to come to a certain conclusion. Okay? Analogy is comparison. In this case, you compare two objects to come to a certain conclusion. Analogy is of two types. Metaphorical analogy and historical analogy. Okay, did you get it? I sent it to you by WhatsApp.
Okay, so analogy means comparison. In other words, we compare two things in order to come to a certain conclusion. Now, analogy is of two types: metaphorical analogy and historical analogy. Now, metaphorical analogy is based on metaphors, i.e., we use a metaphor to express a certain idea. Okay, for example, you say he is a lion, and we know that the lion is a symbol of courage. So this is metaphorical analogy. Okay, so instead of saying that he is courageous, we say he is a lion. So in this case, he is a lion is a metaphor. So metaphorical analogy is related to literature, and you can use it in all of your arguments. Okay, and historical analogy means that we compare two historical events. Okay, historical analogy means that we compare two historical events. For example, America always claims that she is trying to introduce democracy, equality, and justice into the countries of the third world. Right? Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I want to convince you that America's interference in the affairs of the Arab countries does not aim to introduce democracy, justice, and liberty to these countries. How can I do it? I can do it by comparing what's happening in the third world now to what happened, let's say, at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. And all of you know that at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, Europe colonized Africa and Asia, claiming that it was going to introduce democracy, education, civilization, Christianity, enlightenment into these continents, right? And those who are taking the British novel this semester know what I mean. You may have read Heart of Darkness, which is a novel written by Joseph Conrad. Okay? In the novel, Marlowe, the narrator, goes to Africa with the Europeans, thinking that they, i.e. the Europeans, are going to educate, to civilize, to humanize the primitives of Africa. Right? Is it clear?
Yes, doctor.
Yes,
Yes,
doctor.
clear.
Okay? So at the end of the novel, or throughout the course of the novel, Marlowe realizes that Europe is not embarking on a humanitarian mission. Europe is not educating, civilizing, Christianizing, humanizing the Africans. Europe is getting the natural resources of Africa. Okay? Now, if I compare what happened in Africa and Asia at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century to what's happening now, let's say, in certain Arab countries, I come to the conclusion that America doesn't care about the inhabitants of the third world. America wants to control, let's say, the strategic sites of the third world. America wants to control the natural resources of the third world. So this is what we call historical analogy. Is it clear?
Yes, doctor.
Okay.
Doctor, can I ask a question?
Okay, go on.
So the historical analogy, it is related to historical events,
Yes, you compare. Yes.
and we compare it to what is happening now.
Yes, you compare, let's say, what's happening now to what happened in the past. So in this case, we are comparing to historical periods.
Yes, okay, doctor, thank you.
Okay, so this is analogy. So analogy is of two types: metaphorical and historical. Metaphorical analogy is easy to grasp, to understand. It is based on metaphors, and in your career as students of language, you know what a metaphor means, right?
Yes,
Yes.
And I mentioned before Romeo's description of Juliet as the sun. He says it is the east, i.e., her room is the east, and Juliet is the sun. And I said the sun is a source of light, it is a source of warmth, it is a source of life in this poem, and it is also a symbol of beauty. Okay, so at the literal level, Juliet is beautiful like the sun, but at the symbolic level, Juliet is a source of life. And I commented on this before in the Shakespeare course, and maybe in this course at the beginning of the semester. So this is what we call metaphorical analogy. Okay, so we have logical proofs like induction, deduction, analogy. Okay, in addition to this, we have also facts. Facts are related to logical proofs. Okay, so the sun is round and the earth is round. The earth rotates around the sun. These are scientific facts. You can also give statistics. Statistics also provide logical proofs. They appeal to your mind, to your thinking, to your reasoning. Also, giving examples is another kind of providing logical proofs. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes.
yes,
Okay, so these are what we call logical proofs. This is number one. Number two, we have ethos. And I said ethos refers to the reliability or authenticity of the writer. where does reliability come from? I.e., how do we know whether the author is reliable or not? Reliability comes from the author's knowledge. Yes, it is related to the author's knowledge. Is the author knowledgeable about his topic? تسكري لي الصوت لو سمحت. Okay. Ethos means the reliability or authenticity of the writer. It comes from the writer's knowledge. Okay, so it means that the writer knows his topic well. Okay, I will give you an example. I will give you an example. All of you are language students. I don't expect any one of you to write a reliable article, let's say, on medicine, on coronavirus. You are not physicians. You are not medical students. You are not specialized in viruses and what have you. So if you write an argumentative essay on, let's say, coronavirus, you may not be reliable and authentic. Okay? So you can't expect me as a teacher of English literature, let's say, to discuss nuclear physics. It is not my field of interest, my nature, to my specialty. You may expect me to write a good argumentative essay or a good argument on something related to English literature because it is my nature. Okay, so this is the meaning of reliability of the author comes from his knowledge as well as from his experience. Sometimes the writer draws on his experience. So when he draws on his experience, he tends to convince you of his point of view. So here we have knowledge as well as experience. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now here in the poem that we will discuss today or maybe next time, Wilfred Owen has experience of war. Yes, Wilfred Owen has a first-hand experience of war because he himself was a soldier during World War I. And he went to France during World War I. And he was hit during the war. Okay, so his experience leads him to present a reliable description of war. Is it clear? Now, number 3, yes, pathos. Okay, go on.
In the ethos, can we say that, for example, if a writer write about a topic and he says that, for example, he is with or against the topic, while in his real life, it is in contrast. Can we say that in this way it's not reliable?
He wants to convince you of a certain point of view, but in his real life he is against it.
Yes.
He is hypocritical.
So it's not reliable.
Of course, he's not reliable. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. Pathos, this is the relationship between the author and the audience. Okay, i.e. how the author appeals to the emotions of the audience. Okay, so sometimes the author needs to lead the audience to sympathize with his cause. So in this case, the audience presents something that affects the emotions of the audience. I will give you an example. You have taken business English before. In this course, you may have been taught how to write letters to raise funds, i.e. fundraising letters. Okay, so you may want to write a fundraising letter to convince people to donate money to help, let's say, orphans. Okay, now to write an effective fundraising letter that aims to convince the audience to donate money to help orphans, you may write a story about a certain orphan. Yes, this is acceptable in fundraising letters. So you may write a story about an orphan, and the story is highly emotional, i.e. it appeals to the hearts of the readers. Okay, so when the reader sympathizes with that orphan that you are presenting, he may donate a certain sum of money. So this is how we appeal to the emotions of the audience. Is it clear?
Yes, doctor, very clear.
Okay, so pathos means appealing to the emotions of the readers. Okay, so the rhetorical triangle that I have just introduced to you is our methodology, our approach to analyzing dulce et decorum est. Okay? Before I discuss the poem, I want to mention something related to war in literature. Okay? In fact, we have two types of writers who deal with war. Some writers believe that war is something great. It is a great feat, F-E-A-T, a great deed done by heroes. The other group of poets believe that war is not great, so that's why we call them anti-war poets. Anti-war poets, ANTI-war poets. Okay, now Wilfred Owen is an anti-war poet. He doesn't glorify war. Okay, Wilfred Owen in his poems subverts the classical view of war. Okay, in his anti-war poems, Wilfred Owen subverts the classical view of war. What does it mean? The classical view of war is the view that we have in the epic. The epic. Did you study any epics before?
Yes.
Yes.
Which epic did you study?
Gilgamesh.
Okay, what is it all about?
Gilgamesh and Enkidu. He was a
Fighting.
very strong king, but he got a knowledge that his power is limited,
Okay,
and he searched the meaning of life and eternity.
yes. Does he achieve immortality?
Never. He knows that
No.
as a human we can't achieve
No.
mortality, but we have to enjoy the life we are living and not to think about immortality.
Okay,
And that man can't exceed gods.
man cannot what?
Exceed gods.
Okay. What else?
That, for example, the overusage of power isn't helpful because at the beginning he was a tyrant king.
Okay. How does he end up?
He gains an understanding of life.
Okay. Anyway, I'll go back to war in the epic. Okay. Now, Gilgamesh is a Sumerian epic, and the Sumerians do not believe in life after death. They believe that there is no life after death. So that's why Gilgamesh aims at immortalizing himself. And he does immortalize himself through achieving a certain deed. He goes to the forest, which is ruled by Humbaba. He destroys Humbaba and he engraves his name on the trunk of a certain tree. This is how he achieves immortality. Okay, so he kills that beast, Humbaba, right?
But the snake eats the plant before he got it.
What?
A snake eats the plant of immortality before he got it.
Yes, this is to show that there is no immortalization of man. So man cannot be equal to God. Okay? So the only way to immortalize himself is through achieving certain deeds, great deeds. Okay? So how does he immortalize himself? He immortalizes himself by killing Baba that prevents people from entering that forest. And he goes to that forest and engraves his name on the trunk of that tree. So this is a great deed done by Baba, right?
And it gives him a good reputation.
Yes. Now, in a typical epic, there is war, and the epic hero is the one that saves the nation. This is what I want to say. Okay? Now, the epic celebrates the deeds of the epic hero who builds a nation. Okay? So the epic hero defends an inimical force. The enemy is an inimical force that threatens the peace, the security, the safety, the life of the whole nation. Okay? So it is the duty of the epic hero to face that inimical force and destroy it. Okay? So in this case, there should be a certain kind of struggle between the epic hero and the inimical force. So the epic hero destroys the enemy and secures the life of the nation. So in this case, the epic hero is a warrior who achieves a certain glorious deed. So in this case, war is glorious. Okay, so usually, so this is the classical view of war. So the classical view of war maintains that wars are waged by heroes who destroy the enemy of the nation. So in this case, the soldiers build a nation. And in this case, war is glorious. Now, according to Wilfred Owen, war is not glorious. War is not waged by heroes. It is waged by boys who are suffering on the battlefield. They are bleeding. They are running away from the battle. They don't want to face the enemy. And Wilfred Owen comes to the conclusion that soldiers suffer for the sake of nothing. They suffer, and at the end, they destroy their lives. So that's why at the end of the poem he says, you wouldn't say with to children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie dulci et decorum est pro patria mori. So the title means dulci et decorum est pro patria mori. The title is taken from a certain Latin poem, and the line means it is sweet and honorable to die for your country. And according to the poem, school students in Britain were taught this line of poetry to encourage them to go to war. So according to Wilfred Owen, this is a lie. This is not true. So that's why he describes the dying soldier. He shows us how the soldier suffers, how he bleeds, how he dies in a shameful way. So his death is not glorious. His death leads you to sympathize with him, to pity him. So that's why he says, if you see us when we put him in the wagon, you wouldn't say to children ardent for some desperate glory, dulci et decorum est pro patria mori. So the title of the poem is a parody of the poem that celebrates the glories of war. Okay, did you read the poem?
Yes.
Okay. Now in the footnote, you read, Dulci et decorum est is attack from Horace, well known to British schoolboys. Dulci et decorum est pro patria mori. Dulci means sweet, it means and, decorum means honorable, est, this is verb to be, it means is, pro, it means for, patria, country, mori means die. Okay? Dulce means sweet. You have the poem with you.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
write down the meanings of the words. Dulce means sweet. It means and. Decorum means honorable. Est, this is verb to be in Latin. It, pro, for, F-O-R, patria, country, mori means die, from the verb morir. Okay, so it means it is sweet and honorable to die for your country. Okay, so the title is parodic. Parodic, from parody. Parody, P-A-R-O-D-Y. Okay, parody means imitation. Imitating. So when we use parody, we imitate a certain writer, a certain poem, a certain novel, a certain play, but we imitate in order to contrast the imitated text with what we want to deal with. This is the meaning of parody. This is the simplest definition. I'm not going to discuss parody in detail. Okay? Now, parody indicates a contrast between the parodied text, i.e. the text that is imitated, and the new text. Therefore, the purpose is to show the difference. The purpose is to show the difference between the parodied text and the new text. So here it means that Horace, who is a Latin poet, approves of war. And he believes that it is sweet and honorable to die for one's country. Wilfred Owen takes the title, but he uses it parodically. He wants, in other words, to say that it is not sweet. Okay? It is not honorable to die for your country. So that's why we call it a parody. Is it clear now?
Doctor,
Yes.
while reading about this poet, his ideas are same to that of Marianne Moore.
Okay, to a certain extent. Miriam Moore wants to purge man of his evil nature. So if man purges himself of his evil nature, there will be no more wars in the universe. Wilfred Owen presents a stark image of war. War is destructive. It is devastating. It not only destroys countries and civilizations, it destroys the lives of the soldiers who go to war. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay, so both of them are anti-war poets. Okay, but Miriam Moore focuses on the internal causes of war, i.e. hatred. Hatred is one of the emotions that control man's life, and this hatred leads to war. So that she wants to stop all wars by purging man of his hatred. Wilfred Owen is giving a pictorial description of the evils of war. Okay, now Wilfred Owen is a 20th century British English poet. He died at the age of 25, and he was one of the promising poets who died during World War I. They were killed by the war, in other words. Okay? And according to critics, had he lived more than 25 years, he would have become a great poet. Wilfred Owen was a soldier in World War I. That's why we consider him a reliable poet or a reliable speaker. So ethos is present in the poem. So it is one of the elements of argumentation that Wilfred Owen draws on in presenting his argument against war. So we can say that he is authentic, he is reliable, because he himself went to war and died in the war. Okay? Dulci et decorum est, bent double, like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags. We cursed through sludge till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to touch. By the way, we have a lot of images here, and the images are concrete images. Okay, bent double. It describes the physical appearance of the soldiers, like old beggars under sacks. The simile compares the soldiers to beggars under sacks. What does it mean? So he doesn't tell us directly what he wants to communicate. So he communicates his meaning, his themes, through concrete images. So this is the difference between a concrete image and an abstract image. Knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Okay, so the soldiers are exhausted, enervated, weak. So he doesn't tell us directly that they are weak, they are exhausted, they are enervated. So he uses images, bent double, like old beggars under sacks, as if they were carrying heavy sacks on their backs. Knock-kneed, i.e. their knees are knocking each other. This means that they are extremely exhausted. Coughing like hags, i.e. they are diseased, they are sick. We cursed through sludge. They are cursing. Why do they curse? And we will take Freud as a means of understanding what he means by we cursed through sludge. Okay? Till on the haunting flares we turned our backs. He's saying something here. What does it mean?
That the enemies are turning back.
What?
That the enemies are running away. They are escaping.
The soldiers are running away. They are retreating. Instead of facing the enemy, they are running away from the battlefield. So that's why he says, till on the haunting flares, we turned our backs. So he is one of the soldiers, and they are retreating. They are running away from the battlefield. And towards our distant rest began to trudge. They are walking in sludge, i.e. in mire. So there is nothing glorious about war. Okay, I will dismiss the class at this point because you have a class at 1:45 with Dr. Sonia Sykes. Okay, we will discuss the poem in detail on Tuesday. Do you have any question before I dismiss the class?
No, doctor.
No, doctor. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
Thank
We will
you.
see.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm.